The enterprise resource planning environment of 2026 is no longer a passive system of record. We are witnessing the definitive transition toward the autonomous decision engine. This explainer will dismantle the current architecture of enterprise systems, establishing exactly how organizations are shifting from legacy frameworks that merely track operations to AI embedding models that actively execute them. The strategic imperative here is absolute. If your workflows still depend on manual coordination, your system is already obsolete. We are going to look closely at what separates organizations that successfully modernize from those that simply acquire more technical debt.
Here is the operational roadmap for our analysis. First, we will cover the high-stakes hook and executive overview. Second, we move into a detailed operational postmortem. Third, we map out the human blueprint. And finally, we will break down the chronological action plan and guardrails.
We begin with the high-stakes hook and executive overview. The tension we face right now is critical. On one side, we have the sheer inevitability of enterprise AI integration. On the other, we confront the severe financial and operational risks inherent in foundational ERP transformations. 64% of ERP projects notoriously go over budget by 25% or more. This is the reality of hype-defiance. The market heavily promises that by the end of 2026, roughly 40% of enterprise applications will feature task-specific AI agents. Yet, the brutal reality on the ground involves massive technical debt and an unacceptably high probability of failed reimplementations. Wholesale transitions designed purely to capture AI capabilities routinely force organizations to rebuild entwined business processes from scratch. This results in extended operational downtime and burned capital that leadership simply cannot justify. The pragmatic, high-value alternative we are analyzing today is layering agentic intelligence over existing core systems, such as Oracle NetSuite or SAP. You do this without discarding the foundational architecture that already holds your enterprise together. We must separate the vendor marketing from the real-world execution.
Consider the architectural divergence happening right now. Legacy ERP represents passive record-keeping. These monolithic systems guarantee delayed decision-making because they rely on static reporting. They enforce high manual workloads across your finance and supply chain divisions, and they remain rigidly unyielding when scaling is required. Conversely, the 2026 autonomous ERP represents active execution. In this model, real-time intelligence becomes the default state of the business. AI workflow automation handles complex cross-functional tasks. The system predicts, reasons, and executes entirely without human intervention. We are talking about zero-touch operations, where time is no longer the primary constraint on your workforce. Ultimately, the system's capability dictates the pace of the entire enterprise.
We now transition to Section 2, our detailed operational postmortem. This is a forensic analysis of how agentic AI fundamentally alters financial and supply chain processes, demanding exhaustive process restructuring.
We must precisely define the technology we're discussing. Agentic AI acts as a silicon-based workforce. It reasons over a given goal, decomposes that goal into discrete steps, gathers the necessary cross-system data, and then takes autonomous action within strictly defined guardrails. We're moving far beyond the reactive, stateless copilots that merely help draft polite emails or summarize meeting notes. We're deploying proactive, autonomous actors into the core of the business. A prime example is the Oracle Ledger Agent. It does not sit idle waiting for a human query. It continuously monitors journal entries and general ledger anomalies 24 hours a day. It surfaces issues and even drafts adjustment journals before the financial close process even begins.
The absolute thesis here is process before platform. Applying advanced AI to broken workflows merely scales your existing inefficiencies at light speed. You cannot layer intelligence over operational chaos. However, when the underlying process map is systematically rewritten using tools like Oracle Document I/O or SAP Joule, the metrics shift violently. Invoice approval drops from 14 days down to 3 days. Reporting cycle times experience a massive 85% reduction. Order creation compresses from a manual 30 minutes to exactly 1 minute. The technology systematically strips the manual routing out of the equation. It replaces that friction with an autonomous execution layer that standardizes outcomes across the board.
The structural economics of enterprise AI force a strict build versus buy decision for any chief information officer. On the left, packaged platforms like Salesforce, Agentforce, and SAP Joule offer deep, native integration right out of the box. On the right, custom stacks built on tools like Claude Agent SDK, combined with AWS Bedrock, or OpenAI paired with Azure, provide absolute granular control over the logic. The rigorous reality driving this decision is total cost of ownership. That equation flips at approximately 1 million agent conversations per year. At that volume, custom builds often become financially necessary. Furthermore, if your agents need to process personally identifiable information, protected health data, or legally privileged records, data sovereignty alone dictates the necessity of owning the data plane through a custom-built stack.
These agentic algorithms drive massive, quantifiable operational compression across the organization. We are observing a 30% acceleration in financial close times, an 18% reduction in inventory carrying costs, and a staggering 70% reduction in payment advice processing time. The financial mechanisms behind these numbers are deeply analytical. Agentic algorithms process general ledger balances to execute complex multi-entity consolidations without requiring manual data handoffs. On the physical side, in the supply chain, the system autonomously reads demand signals, checks supplier lead times, and posts optimized purchase orders to an execution queue overnight. It does all of this entirely without human prompting.
Moving to Section 3, the human blueprint, we must pivot to the organizational psychology of AI integration, recognizing that technology alone does not secure transformation.
The integration of AI agents alters the human resources operating model at a systemic level. Executives are officially mandated to secure employee identity capital. The human role shifts fundamentally from tedious data assembly to high-level decision-making. Employees are required to become orchestrators of AI agents rather than direct executors of manual tasks. To protect the institution during this transition, role-based permissions must inherit flawlessly. This ensures an agent cannot bypass security and access data the human user is restricted from seeing. Furthermore, when these agents begin recommending succession plans or internal talent mobility, rigorous bias monitoring becomes a strict operational requirement. It is no longer just a theoretical discussion. Leadership must actively manage the resistance born from systemic change fatigue as the workforce processes the sheer velocity of this operational shift.
The scale of this human shift is massive. Consider the number 110,000. That is the number of SAP employees who now have access to one-on-one human HR support. This elevated level of personalized care is possible explicitly because AI service agents now handle the crushing volume of routine policy and payroll inquiries. The data proves a fundamental 2026 reality. As standard, repetitive tasks become entirely automated across the enterprise, contextual human judgment becomes the absolute premium asset. The technology does not replace the human. It clears the static so the human can exercise judgment where the machine cannot.
This brings us to Section 4, the chronological action plan and guardrails. We will establish the precise executive mandate for layering AI over existing systems while strictly minimizing operational risk.
We enforce a strict mandate on what we term Phase A stability. Deploying autonomous agents without immaculate core asset integrity is nothing short of institutional malpractice. Look at your data architecture. It requires clean financial ledgers and consolidated master data to prevent the system from hallucinating financial actions that could trigger compliance failures. Your access management demands rigorous role-based principal propagation so that agents strictly respect enterprise security boundaries. Finally, your infrastructure requires heavily validated inventory systems. This is what grounds any supply chain autonomy in absolute physical reality rather than theoretical data points. You must secure this baseline core integrity before optimizing further.
The deployment protocol follows 4 non-negotiable steps. First, you define governable use cases where clear data sources and decision rules already exist. Second, you ensure data readiness by utilizing analytics to ruthlessly audit the unified schema. Third, you prototype the agentic workflow. This requires building restlets, writing sweet script endpoints, and exposing data securely to the large language model. Finally, you establish human-in-the-loop autonomy. For all early-stage deployments, AI findings must be presented as recommendations requiring explicit human oversight until statistical confidence is irrefutable. You do not hand over the keys until the engine proves it can stay on the road.
Governance protocols are your ultimate fail-safe. Enterprise AI projects consistently fail due to inadequate controls, not a lack of advanced technology. Data security posture management is absolutely mandatory. This requires implementing Microsoft Purview sensitivity labeling and establishing data loss prevention policies specifically designed for Copilot and agent interactions. You must execute principal propagation to maintain rigid identity limits. Furthermore, comprehensive auditability is a non-negotiable requirement to comply with frameworks like the EU AI Act. Finally, administrators must ruthlessly clean stale SharePoint and OneDrive data. Unstructured, outdated, or duplicated information will directly corrupt agent reasoning, leading to flawed autonomous decisions at scale.
This leaves us with the ultimate architectural question.
The competitive advantage in 2026 is not determined by simply possessing an enterprise resource planning system. Everyone has one. The advantage is determined by the autonomy of your operations. You must evaluate the core baseline of your infrastructure today. Is your ERP currently operating as a passive system of record, dragging down cycle times? Or is it transitioning into an autonomous control engine capable of true zero-touch execution? The decisions made regarding these frameworks right now will directly dictate your operational survival through the end of the decade.